In our last hour, we'll be looking at kids who kill in the light of those two 12-year-olds that hacked a complete stranger to death to the bone with a machete. My question to you is, what do you think should happen to kids who kill? There's one school of thought that says if they're under 16, they should not go to jail, that they should be given psychological and psychiatric help and held somewhere, but eventually to be released back into society. One particular case where two 6-year-olds killed a 5-year-old, were left a 5-year-old for dead. They didn't do any time anywhere. They were let back with their families, given psychiatric support, what have you, and back in kindergarten. Which begs the question, could the reason for many of these children killing in the first place is it the very families you're going to release them back to? I'm going to be talking to Anna Motz about that, but I'd be interested to know your take on what you think should happen to kids who kill. Should they just be locked up for the rest of their lives? I mean, some people might even say, should they get the death penalty? I'm just asking, do you think there is such a thing as evil? That these children are inherently evil and cannot be put back into society? 03444991000. You can text the word talk to 87222 or X at TalkTV. This is something that I didn't flag up before. Because I've got Joseph Kotrie-Monson now with our legal roundup, and I've just asked you a really interesting question. I really would be interested on Joseph Kotrie-Monson's take on this, what he thinks should happen to kids who kill. We've got other subjects to cover, but I'm going to throw that at you, Joseph. Hello and welcome to the show. I didn't mean to do that, but I just thought asking this question, that you would have a really interesting take on it, as you do with all of these legal things. What do you think should happen? Because on one side they're saying there's an activist that says children under 16 or people under the age of 16 should be treated as children, whereas you've got two 12-year-olds now, being sentenced and things, about to be sentenced. What do you think with kids who kill? I mean, do you do what they do in some Scandinavian countries with under 16s and rehabilitate them within their families, or what do you do with them legally?
Well, good afternoon, Trisha. Good afternoon, as always, to everybody watching and listening. So, there's a few things going on here. And first of all, overwhelming aim in a civilized society. That term, civilized society, what does it mean? But the overwhelming motivation and the common thread through the youth justice system, certainly in the UK, is rehabilitation, based on two things. First of all, there is a fundamental philosophy, there's an attitude towards children that they make mistakes, they're learning, and they should be forgiven, because children develop, and of course children do bad things. There's a kind of second element to that, though, which is also about prevention. And if you simply punish children who do bad things, they have their lives ahead of them. And unless you're prepared to lock them up indefinitely for the rest of their natural lives, a child who is already so damaged, they've done something terrible to another child or whatever, well, they're going to come out worse. So from a practical point of view as well, rehabilitation is tremendously important. Of course, you can roll some of those arguments out to the justice system as a whole, and you probably should if you want to reduce crime. But with regard to my own views, I think the further you go back into childhood, the further you go back from my age all the way through your 30s, 20s, your teens, and even younger, the greater your capacity for mistakes. And I think there should be a sense of empathy. There should be an understanding.
It's hard, though. It's hard.
Yep.
It's hard, isn't it? Because I know that people are going to be watching, say, how do you rehabilitation really after you've hacked somebody to death? It's like, oops, I made a mistake.
Well,
it's a hard
it's very hard, and there's usually a combination of a couple of things going on. In most of those cases, the most horrific cases, you often have a combination, at least, of extreme abuse and exposure to violence at home. So the principle must be that you can rehabilitate out with treating people well what has been put in by them being treated, by children being treated badly on the one hand, but it's also often, and you see it often if there's a case where there are two children, one of whom seems to be the dominant
Yeah.
actor, and one of them often is in fact really, it kind of ticks those psychopath boxes, that has those traits in strong to a strong extent. And often in those types of cases, one might be rehabilitated and one can't. You have to be practical. Somebody who's likely to kill shouldn't be let out into society. But of course, that's why with adults, for example, we have these sentences. And some people might say, well, life should mean life in all murder cases. Well, what actually happens is you have a system whereby people aren't let out when they get a life sentence. First of all, the minimum recommendation, they're 20, 25, 30 years. We were talking about it just last week, weren't we? But also, they must satisfy that they're unlikely, satisfy the parole board that they're unlikely to repeat the offences. Of course, once someone spends 5, 10 years in prison, they're, especially with men,
Yeah.
the likelihood of them having the kind of aggression and energy, there's a dulling effect that long sentences have on people, on their kind of personality, their psyche and their energy, and it just makes them less likely to commit violent offences.